Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna, and in today's video, we're going to address a reader question, or a viewer question rather, which is how do I approach drawing things like grass, bushes, and trees? So with every how to draw type of video, your mileage may vary. This is not saying this is how to do it. This is just saying this is how I do it. So I wanted to share a few of my techniques with you. So I'll start off by just considering the idea that when most folks draw grass, they will just draw these lines. And that is certainly one way to do it, but you'll notice that drawing grass that's close up or drawing grass that's further away, it's a little bit hard to know that just with these lines, they're flat, they're dimensionless. There's nothing that gives me any sense of form. But you can use this method in conjunction with drawing other blades of grass. So the key word here is blade. If we look at a blade of grass, we can see that there is a stem. Usually it's in the earth, and then you've got the actual leaf itself, and it looks something like this. It's kind of a tapered form. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing too is when you bend that leaf, you will see a shape that looks something like this, where the top part of the leaf is now overlapping the bottom part of the leaf. So we can use this and we can create variations of leaf or blade thickness and height to create a compelling area of grass. So I will just start off by just creating a few elements of overlapped grass. I'll make some of the blades thinner. I'll make some of the blades smaller. And I'll start in like this. Now, I can use some of those lines in conjunction with that to help give some form. Now, grass comes in all shapes and sizes, and this is something that you might see in the woods or an area that hasn't been mowed. You're going to see some blades that are just going to be more horizontal. And notice that I'm not drawing every single blade. I'm thinking about density. And what I mean by that is there are going to be certain areas of this grass that are going to appear to be lighter to the viewer, and there are going to be some areas that are going to be more dense. There's going to be more leaves or blades of grass. So in those cases, what I'm doing is I'm just adding more repeating shapes here. You can already start to see that there's a lot more density. And with that, what I can also do just to make this a little more believable, I can come back in and add some blades of grass that are going to be uh, darker or in shadows. And what this does is it gives a little bit more depth to this particular area. So need to close off some gaps here. Like so. So you can see that that adds thickness. You can also just brush that in if you want. I think what is also helpful too is if you have a brush that is not super duper thin, you can go in and use your pressure sensitivity. You can add patches that look something like that. So when you're varying really thin brushwork with some thicker brushwork, plus you're using some form with the actual blades of grass, I think you can get something that looks pretty convincing as grass. So, uh, you know, think about adding form and adding dimension using some dark patches to give some extra form here. And then also the proximity, having lots of blades of grass that are really closer and clumped together will make that section appear to be darker. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's consider how we would add something like a bush. So many ways of approaching this. So let's do this on its own layer. Again, I'm using a brush. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. It's roughly 125. And I'm going to use this thicker brush. This is one of my own custom brushes. You can use any kind of brush that has like a cartoony inker type of feel to it. And I'm just repeating this pattern. And notice here, we're giving lots of areas of darkness, but we're also having some areas of light that seem to be peering through. And so now this kind of gives us that form of a bush. Now, this is just a generic bush. There are bushes of different types. Again, look at references, look at nature. You'll see in nature, you'll see things that basically start out thin and then thicken up, or vice versa. So tapering is something that you will see in nature quite a bit. So here's an example of a bush. You might have another bush where you're just repeating a open line. And again, you can come back in and add some dark values to give a little bit of extra form, so it doesn't look flat. Adding those dark values in, and maybe even adding a little bit of definition to some of the blades or some of the leaves that are on this bush, I think can be helpful. Okay, so that's bushes of different types. Again, this is just giving you ways of thinking about this. So now let's go ahead and add a tree. If we were to add a tree, we know that trees generally, this is just a kind of like an oak tree or a maple tree or something like that, not an evergreen. We can see that it gets thicker at the base and it starts to get thinner as we start to look up to the top of the tree. And with these types of trees, you're going to see portions of the root, which I'll just clean up here, that kind of appear to extend from the top of the ground and they bury the roots under the ground. So I'm just drawing these lines here. And again, what I'll do is I'll cover these up with some vegetation. I will add more overlap. I will vary the size of the blades of grass around the tree. So it basically gives a sense of overlap. The grass is overlapping the trunk of the tree. So for the actual roots, I'll draw a few lines that give me a sense of the contour of the roots themselves. So when I say contour, if you were to think about a tapered cylinder, the contour is basically those extra lines that are defining the roundness of that cylindrical shape. So you can see here, that's what I've done here. I've basically drawn lines that are indicative of the roundness of the root. And then for this section right here, I'll just draw some irregular lines. They don't have to be perfect. Again, this is going to provide some texture. And something that I like to think about too is where the light might be coming from or how I'm going to indicate the light. I'll just make portions of this particular trunk a little bit darker. I'll go a little bit thicker with my brush using a more pressure. And I'll make this side a little bit darker. So you can see that there's a implied sense of light. There's light coming from the left, and the right side of this trunk appears to be darker. Again, you're going to have some branches. And those will be dark over here. You might have another set of branches over here. And I'll also even throw in some little dots and other doodads to give it some form. All right, so what about the canopy of the tree? Again, lots of ways of doing this. I'll just show you one method here. So if we're going to have a very thick canopy, the inner part of that canopy is going to appear to be darker. So what I'll do is I'll just denote this area right here. Just repeating this brush pattern. Might fill some of these areas in with dark values. And as we start to work our way out, I'll still have that repeating pattern, but notice that the lines are getting a lot less thick. Again, you don't have to draw every single leaf on the tree. This is enough to go ahead and give that tree a sense of volume. Like we're seeing that there is something that looks like we've got overlapped repeating shapes. And again, you can play with the idea of including more of those repeating shapes to make this area appear to be darker. Like as we start to move away from the canopy, we can start to see that the tree's leaves are going to receive more light. And so that's why I'm doubling up on the density of these leaves here, just to give it a sense of dark and light values. And now if I were to merge those layers together and just turn this into black, you can see that we do have this sense of form on the actual canopy of the tree. And I didn't do the other side here, but you basically get the same, you get the basic gist. So, you know, you can just pop in a little bit of, variations here. You can add some rocks, stones, other things of that nature. Again, you don't have to draw every single blade of grass, but do keep in mind density. Try to have these repeating forms really super tight and have a few that are kind of uh, off by themselves, and that gives you a little bit more variety. So if you found value in this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up so more folks can find it. I appreciate all the support and the new subscribers that we've had at the channel. Thank you so much for your kind words, your comments, and your emails. I'm kind of overwhelmed, but in a great way. If you'd like me to cover a tip or technique, or you have something that you're struggling with, please let me know in the comments below, and I will add it to the list. All right. So thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Later.